Hello, vibrant souls. Welcome back to another episode of the Narrator Ramirez podcast. If you're listening to me on Spotify, guess what? So I'm actually also recording it via StreamYard to upload it on YouTube. So if watching podcasts or interviews is your thing, go look me up on YouTube and I shall be there. So it's Narrator Ramirez on YouTube. I'm going to start recording these videos and just posting them. So you're going to have both the audio and the video. And if you're watching on YouTube, then hey, go check out my podcast on Spotify. It's called The Narrator Ramirez Podcast. And don't forget to rate and to follow. So, welcome to another episode again of Ah, the Narrator Ramirez podcast. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm also very glad that I'm here. I don't have a specific topic that I'm going to be talking about today, so I'm going to be talking out loud, and I invite you to think out loud, to ponder out loud with me, and if any of this makes sense or doesn't make sense, or if any of this leads to questions or to comments, please feel free to reach out. So, one of the things that I wanted to ponder out loud on is the masculine and the feminine energy. So, I hung out with a friend this weekend, and I'm not really sure how the conversation was brought up, but we were talking about the masculine energy and the feminine energy and how the roles seem to be reversed, and just sharing more on how it's healthy but it's also unhealthy, and how can we connect back to those inherent energies that's within us. So just like a little foundation, I guess, to start this pondering is one, that we were specifically talking about heterosexual relationships between biologically man and biologically a woman. So I just want to put that out there. We are talking about that. And two, I want to start off with pondering in a way where I set the foundation of how we're all humans nonetheless, right? Like how we're all humans with our feelings, with our emotions, with our thoughts. And I want to have that foundation to kind of build on this whole feminine and masculine role. Because I'm not talking about the traditional masculine and feminine role that society or like the world has put on us, of the man being hardworking and they have to provide and there's no feelings, and it's very much shutting down and he just has to go to work and provide for the family. And I'm not talking about a submissive woman who doesn't have a voice and who has to stay at home and do the house chore stuff. Like, that's not what I'm talking about, and I'm not going towards that way. What I am talking about, and I'm pretty sure there's videos out there that I would love to probably look into after this, is these inherent roles of a man being in a masculine energy of like leadership, of maybe, yes, providing, but not just materialistic, right? Maybe providing space, gentle space, maybe providing um like those gentle conversations, maybe providing that leadership role of the masculinity that it comes inherently from within them, right? And for a woman, like, I'm also talking about that gentle role within them that is maybe like submissive, but not in the society way, right? Like submissive, maybe of she lets herself be held. She does have a voice and she is empowered and she is like a queen vibe. Same with the dude, right? King vibes. So I'm talking about like those roles, right? And I'm pretty sure there's more to it in terms of like what to add to the list of it. And if you're on here, let me know. I would, like I said, exploring out loud. But my friend and I were talking about how we're disconnected from these inherent roles that comes naturally from within us, and how women display more of the dominant, like independent leadership type of role. Nothing wrong with it, totally nothing wrong with it. And men display more of the nonchalant, like not really speaking up, not really putting his like foundation down, or like, like that space down, um being very much going with the flow. And again, not going with the flow, that's not a bad thing. I feel like going with the flow is part of that foundation that I just said of being human, that it's all inherently with us, but more so like going with the flow in terms of maybe not knowing what they want, maybe not speaking up when they actually don't want something, going with the flow, maybe like walking on eggshells type of like space. So we were just talking about, how the roles seem to be like reversed, and how in relationships we've had these conversations where it's this thing that we're asking of a partner, or that we or our partner is asking of us, right? So we were talking about that, and we were just getting curious with like, okay, well, how does that happen, right? Like, how does one in a relationship inherently fulfill this role, yet at the same time, how can the other person help with that energy, but also again, be in that space for themselves? Hopefully I haven't lost you guys. So that's what we were talking about. That's what we were curious about, and we have no answers. So we didn't come up with any answers really. But I mean, the answers that did pop up, I guess, was, well, one, sometimes we ask this from our partners, right? And yet at the same time, we forget to look at ourselves on what we have to let go in order for our partners to pick up, and vice versa. Like, what is something that our partners have to let go so we can pick up? So that's one of the solutions that we were thinking about. We didn't even name it solutions. We were just like pondering out loud. We were sharing more, of course, of like the trauma spaces, right? Where sometimes we get disconnected from these roles at a very young age, where as a woman, right, I can speak for that for myself. It was very much make sure that everybody gets taken care of. Visitors came, make sure you give them like water, make sure that they feel like at home, like all these lists, right, of being submissive, of being hands down, whatever you want type of person, not vocalizing my no's, right? Because I had to be nice, I had to be kind, more so nice. There's a difference between kind and nice. And it was just playing the part of being nice. And from a Hispanic, background, because I'm Hispanic, I can probably speak for the Hispanic male, right? Like as a very young kid, you're it's very leaned on don't show any tears, like man up. Why are you crying? And also, by the way, I there's a post on Facebook that says something along the lines of like, cheers to my dad for raising me like a man, even though I'm a woman. So I could probably speak into that space where my dad was like that too, where it was very much, why are you crying? Like, don't cry. I will give you something to cry about. And men, little boys are raised like that in this culture, and I'm pretty sure in other cultures. So it's 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 going back to that space of, okay, like we were disconnected from our inherent role or our inherent energy as young kids, and how do we get back to that, right? Because I'm pretty sure, again, pondering out loud, we were talking about how I'm pretty sure when a woman is in that space, in her femininity, and I'm pretty sure when a man is in that space in his masculinity, somehow it works together very like a puzzle. Like it works together very instantly, or very um like aligned and connected. So yeah. So it's been on my mind, right? These last couple of days since we've talked about it. And I'm going to keep pondering on it. So again, if you guys have any other questions, not questions, I mean, yes, if you guys have questions, let me know. But if there's any thoughts too, also let me know. Because as I'm talking out loud, about this. It's something that I also want to share, or not share, it's something that I want to research. And I've seen posts here and there about it on Instagram. So it's definitely piques my curiosity and I want to explore it. So the other thing that I want to share, right, because it's a random podcast and we're talking out loud, is that I just finished reading this book called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents: How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, or Self-Involved Parents. And it's by Lindsay Brimson. So it's a very, very good book. It has to be one of the best books that I've read so far when it comes to healing and trauma and like self-growth. So I'll read you guys like the back thingy to see if you guys are interested, right? So, was your parent difficult, immature, or emotionally unavailable? If you grew up with an emotionally immature, unavailable, or selfish parent, you may have lingering feelings of anger, loneliness, betrayal, or abandonment. You may recall your childhood as a time when your emotional needs were not met, when your feelings were dismissed, or when you took on adult levels of responsibility in an effort to compensate for your parents' behavior. These wounds can be healed and you can move forward in your life. In this breakthrough book, clinical psychologist Lindsay Gimson exposes the destructive nature of parents who are emotionally immature or unavailable. You will see how these parents create a sense of neglect and discover ways to heal from the pain and confusion caused by your childhood. By freeing yourself from your parents' emotional immaturity, you can recover your true nature, control how you react to them, and avoid disappointment. Finally, you'll learn how to create positive new relationships so you can build a better life. So, again, really, really good. If you've listened to some of my podcast episodes, or if you've listened to my tea times with other people, or just like in general, I'll share stories of, like my family, and I love my family. Love my family. But as you hear these conversations with others, or as I'm here like talking, there are certain not concepts, certain behaviors that I grew up with and that I'm still currently learning how to navigate with my parents that have totally made me feel disappointed, that have totally made me feel like unheard, unseen, and angry, and even that space of like abandonment. So this book really touched on really good bases on how to navigate through a lot of those feelings. And for a long time, I honestly thought that one, I was a little crazy, and two, there was a feeling of just um not disappointment, but just continue yeah, I guess it is disappointment, of continual disappointment. So, and again, like when I'm curious about something or when something pops up, it's this thing where I constantly look it up, right? Like I look up for articles, I look up for YouTube videos, I look up whatever it is. And it's been maybe like the last couple of years that I've really been exploring these things where, okay, like I don't think I'm the wrong one. Or I'm not the wrong one. I don't think I'm the whole problem, basically, right? It started in COVID. So I started doing therapy, and it's actually through therapy where I started to realize, like, hold on, like, there's so much more. Like, I'm not the main problem, right? And to be honest, therapy and this book are like the main components as to navigating through those feelings. So, to share a little bit more, let's see. One of the things that recently um, really, really clicked for me is being an observant to our family. So let me look up for the page. Let's see. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Okay, I think I'm almost there. Becoming observational. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you guys, okay? So it's the portion of this is forging a new relationship. The rest of this chapter explores how to handle an emotionally immature parent as well as other people by changing your expectation and replacing reactivity with observation. Three key approaches will help you free yourself from getting caught up in your parents' emotional immaturity: detach observation, maturity awareness, and stepping away from your old self role. So I'm only going to talk about the detached observation because that one literally was like, so the first step in gaining your emotional freedom is to assess whether either of your parents was emotionally immature. Given that you're still reading this book, you probably decided that at least one of your parents fits that description. Such a parent can probably never fulfill your childhood vision of a loving parent. The only achievable goal is to act from your own true nature, not the role self that pleases your parent. You can't win your parent over, but you can save yourself. For my own understanding of how this works, I'm indebted to family therapist Murray Bowen for his family systems theory, 1978, which describes how emotionally immature parents promote emotional enmeshment over individual identity. As a reminder, enmeshment occurs when parents don't respect boundaries, protect their unresolved project their unresolved issues onto their children and get too involved in in their children's business. In families dominated by emotionally immature people, enmeshment and playing roles are valued in order to keep the family quote close unclose. Ah, unquote. Wait, hold on. Let me read that sentence again. In families dominated by emotionally immature people, enmeshment and playing roles are valued in order to keep the family, quote, close, unquote. Of course, genuine communication and emotional intimacy are absent in such families. No one's true self is ever acknowledged. Further, in an enmeshed family, if you have a problem with someone, you talk about that person to other people instead of going to the people directly. Bowen called this triangulation and character enmeshment as the glue that keeps such families together. Bowen also explored how this situation might be remedied, at least for some family members. He found that observation and emotional detachment can give individuals a place to stand outside of the family system. When people keep themselves poised in neutral observation, they can't be hurt or emotionally ensnared by other people's behavior. Okay, last part. Like, becoming observational. When interacting with emotionally immature people, you'll feel more centered if you can operate from a calm thinking perspective rather than emotional reactivity. Start by settling yourself and getting into an observational, detached frame of mind. There are any there are any number of ways to do this. For example, you can count your breaths slowly, tense and relax your muscle groups in a systematic sequence, or imagine calming imaginary. Imagine or calming imager. I can't say it. Images. Next, your job is to stay detached emotionally and observe how others behave, just like a scientist world. Pretend you're conducting a field study. What words would you use to describe others' facial expressions? What is their body language communicating? Does their voice sound calm or tense? Do they appear rigid or receptive? How do they respond when you try to relate? What do you find yourself feeling? Can you spot any of the emotional immature behaviors described in chapter 2 and 3? If you're practicing observing your parent or other loved ones and find yourself getting emotional, you distress your distrust is a sign that your healing fantasy has been activated. You've fallen back into believing that you can't be okay if they don't validate you. If you start slipping into your fantasy that you may be able to get the other person to change, you'll feel weak, vulnerable, apprehensive, and needy. This extremely unpleasant feeling of weakness is a signal that you need to shift out of responding emotionally and move back into observation mode. If you find yourself becoming reactive, silently repeat to yourself, detach, detach, detach. Make a point of consciously describing the other person in words, silently to yourself. During a stressful interaction, this kind of mental narration can center and ground you. Whenever you try to find the exact words to describe something, it helps redirect your brain's energy away from emotional reactivity. The same goes for getting control over your own emotional reactions. Silently narrating your own emotional reactions can give you that extra bit of objectivity that cools things down. If the other person is still getting to you, find an excuse to put some distance between you. Excuse yourself from the room for a bathroom break. Play with a pet, take a walk, or run an errand. Gaze out the window and notice nature. If you're interacting on the phone, find a pretext to get off the phone and say you look forward to talking another time. Use whatever excuse you need to take some time to get yourself back into a more detached, observational mindset. As you can see, staying observational isn't passive. It's a very active process. It's also the royal road out of emotional enmeshment. As you practice observing, you'll become stronger and more confident in your ability to see what's really going on, especially now that you have more of an understanding of emotional immaturity. You no longer have to be the upset, helpless child, devastated by the potshots of your parent. Your clear mind and observational attitude will keep you strong no matter what the other person does. So, really, really freaking good. So, one of the things that I also want to share with you guys, that actually I should have shared before I did that, is the fantasy that a parent will change. And okay, so I didn't share that, right? And maybe you guys have to get the book to read it. Um, but it talks about how we have this fantasy that at some point our parents will come around and understand us, or that at that at some point our parents will come back around and they'll see us and they'll hear us or they'll validate us. And what it talks about in the book is that that parent is not coming, that we have to grieve that parent that we keep hoping will be present. And it was talking more about how in those moments when there is emotional reactivity on our side, that's because we still have this fantasy role of our parents coming around at some point. And this really, really clicked. Again, I love my parents. I'm forever grateful for them. I would not change them for the world. Maybe one day we'll do a podcast about 10 things that I love about my parents. Super, super grateful for them. I have my mom's I have my mom's writing tattooed on me, and I want to get my dad's too. Like, I really do look up to them. I love them so dearly. They're so close to my heart. I appreciate them and I know their strengths. However, that doesn't take away the fact of the emotional unavailability that was present growing up, or that continues to be present as an adult, right? Or the rejecting that was present growing up and that still continues to be present now. So even in this phase, it's like, okay, both could be present at the same time, right? Like, I know I have friends and I've heard stories of, even in this book too, it talks about children, adult children, completely cutting their parents off. And now, as an adult, it makes sense. And if you're in this type of family where that's not a thing, like, I've heard of that too. Like, I grew up with that whole narrative that family is family, and like, how could you do something like that? Like, that's your only mom. And it becomes this like desperate, almost end of the world type of like narrative. And yet, I do believe that we need to have more conversations where it's okay to cut off our parents. And I wouldn't do that. Like, I can see why, right? Like, I can see why adult children do that. I don't feel like that in the space with my parents, but I do feel like it's necessary to have these conversations about our families or about parents where it's okay and there is going to be grief and there is going to be anger, and people are going to view us as being bad kids and naughty kids or ungrateful children, right? Which is something that we grew up with also as children. So it's been an interesting last couple of years of learning more of this enmeshment family systems, right? Of the parents not um ending where they are at and where their children begin, so to speak. So it's been, and I think for a long time, I don't think I wanted to explore it, or I didn't even know how, to be honest with you, like, how to explore it because I thought it was normal. Like, I thought that this was just how family was and how family will continue to be. And until, again, like, I had my own therapy session one time. This was during COVID, and I wasn't living at home at the time. And I was talking on the phone with my dad, and just part of the conversations didn't make me feel like, it made me feel disrespected. It made me feel, like, super invalidated, and I remember just learning with my therapist, like, boundaries, like, learning how to say no and learning how to be like, "Actually, I don't wanna talk to you right now." And when that first happened, it dawned on me, like, well, like, I can actually say that to my family, like, I can get off the phone like that, or I don't have to take it. And it was interesting because, like, I ended up being on the phone with my dad, and he was saying, like, some type of joke, and I didn't appreciate it. It was like a bully vibe type of joke, and I was on the phone and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "I don't appreciate the joke." And he said it again. He was like, "Oh, like, I'm just joking around." I was like, "Dad," I was like, "I don't appreciate it. Like, I don't like it." He said it one more time, and I was like, "Dad," I was like, "If you say it again, like, I'm gonna hang up the phone. Like, I don't wanna talk to you if you're gonna keep saying it." And he said it again, and I hung up. I was like, "Okay." I was like, I said I was gonna hang up, so I'm hanging up. I love you. Bye. And literally, I was shaking. It was such an interesting feeling. It was so new, and it made me so nervous, and it made me feel scared. And I went back to the people that I was with at the time and just, like, talking to them about it, and they were super validating about, how that was not okay and how it was right to feel in my feelings. And it just became more of this uncovering of this, like, family energy and enmeshment, and um feeling, like, disappointed over and over again that I wasn't being seen or validated, or that certain comments were not okay, and I kept taking it and I kept swallowing it, right? So, really good book. Of course, therapy is also a thing. So again, like, it doesn't take it away, right? So a huge thing that I love to share on my podcast, on anything on here, is that we can hold both spaces. We can hold both positive and negative, everything in between. We can hold sadness and joy at the same time. We can hold all these things together. So it's definitely been an experience for me to be able to hold the space of deep gratitude and deep appreciation for them and with them. And at the same time, being able to hold also the hurt and the processing of how to learn my boundaries. And again, like, guilt's still present. So it's been a journey to learn that, okay, like, guilt is here and logically, right? Like, it doesn't make sense, but yet it's in my body, and just being present with it and learning how to navigate through that. So, yeah. So let me see. I'm debating whether I should share this. Let's see. Let me just share, like, the little portion of it, because then it talks about a story, so I won't read the story. But it says here, the fantasy that a parent will change. A common fantasy among children of emotionally immature parents is that their parents will have a change of heart and finally love them by showing concern. Unfortunately, self preoccupied parents refuse all invitations to fulfill their part in their child's healing story. Focused on their own healing fantasy, they expect their children to make up for their children's hurts. Seeking their parents' healing love, many people hop around after their parents like hungry birds, trying to elicit a crumb of positive response from them. In adulthood, these children often learn a variety of healthy communication skills and hope that these skills will improve their relationship with their parents. They think they might finally have techniques necessary to draw their parents into a rewarding interaction, which I've also been there. I've learned, I've learned communication styles. I've learned, all these things for myself that I learned again through my own journey, my healing journey, that I had this expectation or this feeling like, oh my God, I think I have the answer. Maybe I can help you learn how to communicate or help you, whatever, right? Doesn't work. Hasn't worked. I mean, I do give my parents credit though, because though I may be more often than not of them being in that space, there have been so many times where I have talked to my parents about these new techniques, about these tools, or something happens between us and I share, my feelings, or I share like a tool, and they have thought about it on their own and they have come back around and like talked to me about it. So I think that's the reason why I'm not in that space of like I'm going to cut my parents off, because they're still slightly very reflective about the stuff. They do end up coming around eventually. Not at everything, but so yeah. So this is my podcast, speaking out loud today. No specific topic. So if you guys have any questions or any comments, feel free to reach out. There's been a lot happening on my side for the last couple weeks. I am definitely going through a heartbreak. So a couple weeks ago, my heart was very tender and just very raw, and I was able to like sit with it and move through these feelings. And I'm so grateful for the people in my life that have been holding me through this season in my life, which is also very new to me. um a couple weeks ago, like as the heartbreak hit and I've been in these feelings, I honestly don't ever think I've allowed myself to be held the way that I have. And shout out to my best friend, because oh gosh, am I so fucking grateful for her. um yeah, just being in the space of allowing myself to be held by her, and some of my friends at work who have been becoming such great friends as well. And again, like so fucking grateful for the vibrant souls in my life, right? I've been leaning on that and leaning on our interactions and our laughters. And, it's been a little bit of a process of like, okay, well, how do I show up to social media, to my podcast, to just this part of my life that's online? And it has made me wonder, like, how the fuck did like Gabby Bernstein do it? How the fuck does like Joe Rogan do it? Right? Like, um, so it's been very interesting for sure. But I am on social media and I am expressing a little bit here and there on what I'm doing, right? For sure, there has been so many tears and I've been crying here and there. And as days, go through, the tears aren't as heavy or as present, but I have been allowing myself to feel them. And that I probably will not post on social media. I can't do the whole like recording myself as I'm crying. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. I know people do it on social media. There's absolutely no judgment with that, like whatsoever. But it's something for sure that I can't do online. Just even the thought of it. I think I tried it once and it literally disrupted like me just being deeply in my feels. Um and it's like, no, like hold on, like I want to be in my feels. I want to be present with them. I want to be like just me and my feels, like just me and my tears, right? Again, not saying that you don't do that when you are recording and you're posting it, but can't do that for myself. However, I did post a video the other day of like moving our bodies, right? How in this season in my life, I am getting myself out for a walk, for a run, to go to the gym, to do yoga, to do stretching, because I know huge um the importance of moving our bodies, especially when we're going through changes and when there's feelings and when there's like shifts within us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like all of that good stuff. And just to share more with you on the caption, right? Like I shared how it's necessary for us to move our bodies. Not because we're trying to lose weight, not because we're trying to be a certain size, not because whatever that reason is. It's necessary for us to move our bodies because our bodies ask us to, and because it's a need. And I wrote too how it's a need just as much as we need water, right? Like I am a strong believer that we hold feelings, that we hold emotions, that we hold, like trauma in the body. And when we go through hard seasons in our lives, we have to do that for ourselves. We have to move and we have to get up and we have to do that for our bodies, right? Like our bodies are so sacred. They literally hold us from the moment we enter this earth until the ends when we leave this earth. Like, why not give it love in that way, right? So I've been sharing that. Like, I've been sharing um, how that's one of the ways that I'm going through it. And one of the things too that I realized for myself is that I'm literally in this season of like walking my talk. You know, a really good friend last week asked me like, "Hey, like how are you doing through this season in your life?" And I literally laughed and I was like, "Oh my god, like I'm literally like walking the talk." And what do I mean by that, right? I'm on here and I share tools and I share techniques and I share things that I've learned and past experiences with relationships, with work, with, healing, with trauma, like so much. And it all goes back to like this connection with yourself and with spirit, right? With God. And in the season in my life, I find myself really leaning on those tools again, really leaning on those techniques, really going full force with what I share. And if anything, something that I've been realizing is how much it's added conviction to what I've shared on here. How much it's added on, oh my God, like I know what I'm talking about. Or, okay, like this does fucking work. Like I'm so glad that I'm sharing it. Like I'm so glad that I have been sharing it. I'm so glad that like I've had all these experiences, that I have a tool belt and it's full and it's amazing and it's great and it's awesome. But the other thing too that I have come to realize is that I'm also fucking human, right? That I'm also human and that I'm also learning and that I'm also growing and that I don't know everything. When I first started this life coaching thing, when I first started my tea times, when I first started sharing stuff online, it was a little harder because I had this belief that I had to know everything, that I had to know everything and everything as a meditation teacher and as a life coach. And of course, like that's changed over the last couple years. And now I'm very much more in the space of like, no, we're all human. Like we're all going through this experience collectively together. And the season in my life, it's really added that, like, oh, like, yes, like I am human and I don't know everything. And I'll never know everything. But what a beautiful experience to be learning as I share, right? Or to be in this space of healing as I also guide others to heal, or being in this space of, oh, yeah, like I also have more blocks of my own to learn and to uncover how beautiful that I can also be in a space of others to help others do the same, right? Prayer, same thing, like meditation, like same thing. Like, yeah, so if anything, it also adds so much more to my humanity. And I'm so grateful for that too. So, yeah, so here I am, I'm showing up, and maybe that's why I didn't have a topic today because I didn't know what to share. But last little thing too, right? One of the reasons why I decided to show up today and just talk out loud and just fucking press record and see where it went is that this weekend I was talking to the same friend that I was talking to about the beginning of this podcast of, the masculine and the feminine role. And I got reminded of my first podcast. So my friend was mentioning how the first episode, it was very much like, oh, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, and how it resonated. And as my friend was sharing, I was like, oh my God, like that first episode also resonates with me. 17 episodes in, how awesome. Where I just gotta do it, right? Just gotta do it. And I sat with that the last couple of days and I'm like, yeah, I just gotta show up and do it because I love it, because I'm passionate about it, because it's on my mind and because it's fun. So it's very, very fun for me to show up like this. Um, so yeah, I think I had a thought that I was gonna go on with that, but I guess like a little piece of motivation if you're in a space and wanting to try something, or if you're in a space of being curious about something, just fucking do it. Don't add on a list on what you need or on how it's gonna be great if you have all this stuff. Don't create a list for yourself. Just do it. And I'm in it too with you guys. So, yeah. Okay, so much, much love, guys. Thank you guys for being here. If any of this resonates, like always, feel free to hit me up. And don't forget, please, to follow my podcast and to also rate it. And don't forget to share it to your people. So, yeah. Okay. Much, much love, guys.